Hello and welcome back to the channel. This evening we're looking at this. We're looking at a pattern of 1914 Enfield rifle, or an American Enfield, or the pattern 1914. So what is this and why did it come about? So it came about in response to the Boer War, because it's typical of departments of defence, or ministries of defence, or ministries of war, or whatever you call them, to gear themselves up to fight the last war. And their last war was the Boer War in this instance. And their long magazine Lee Enfields facing 7mm Mauser rifles used by the Boers just weren't up to the task. They saw that charge loading was the way to go. They had the long magazine Lee Enfield had that, just had a magazine, and spare magazines were issued, but they weren't issued that widely, and all they got was an extra one. And they saw that charger loading was the way to go. So going forward, they wanted a Mauser action, which this has, a Mauser action. Yeah, that long extractor claw there, similar to a Mauser. Front locking lugs, which this has, front locking lugs. The Mauser action, and they wanted rimless cartridges. The rimless cartridges, that was the sticking point. That's what they couldn't do. But they tried to develop what was a kind of .276mm caseless ammunition, which roughly would have worked out about, same as 7mm Magnum today. And the round was very, very good, very hot, extremely good ballistics, but it was just too good for the rifle that they had made. So they needed another rifle. And what they had come up with, this design here, which would have been the pattern 13 at the time. Several thousand were made. They were sent out for testing, and they worked very, very well, but they burnt out a little too quick because the ammunition just was too hot. It was burning out the throats of the rifles. So the design was good, but not good enough to handle the round that they made for it. So that was all fine. Then war were declared, and their short magazine Lee Enfields, they just didn't have enough of them. The BEF at the time was a volunteer force of about 250, maybe 300,000 men, nowhere near good enough for a large-scale war in Europe. So, with the introduction of conscription, they needed extra rifles, and they contracted 3 factories in the United States to build this rifle. It's greatly simplified for manufacture, a one-piece stock, as opposed to the 2-piece stocks that the Enfields had, where the butt was screwed onto the action body or receiver, and the rest of the handguard up at the front. This was just one-piece stock, a single stock. We're not counting the top handguards, that doesn't quite count. These were made in Winchester, in Remington, and another factory built specifically to make these rifles, Remington of Eddystone. And they were contracted to make something in the line of 1 million, but only 1 million were made between the 3 factories, instead of just Eddystone, who were contracted to make 1 million. Less than 1 million were produced. Now, these are actually a really, really good rifle. Even in 303, without the hot ammunition that they were initially made for. Even in 303, they're a very, very accurate, very easy to work rifle. To take 5 rounds instead of the usual 10 round Lee Enfield load that they're pretty sure are kind of used to. This rifle was kind of the redheaded stepchild of rifles. British didn't like it because it wasn't a Lee Enfield. Americans didn't like it because it was too much like an Enfield. This took went on to become the pattern of 1917 for the United States, because they had the similar situation when they were landed in the Great War, that they hadn't got enough rifles, and there wasn't enough Springfield 03 rifles to arm everybody. So Winchester and Remington and Eddystone were already geared up to produce these rifles, but weren't producing any because the British had had enough at that stage. So they ramped up and they churned these out in 30-06 for the Americans, and these ended up, even though this was the auxiliary or the backup rifle, there was actually more of these than there were Springfield 1903s. Right, so load like that, strip in you. Right. This has a fabulous rear sight, way ahead of its time. A flip-up aperture sight to the rear of the receiver, when most other sights at the time were tangent sights mounted to the barrel. This gave you a much longer sight radius. Did a flip forward battle sight of 200 yards there, or you could flip up and you have very, very finely adjusted sights. Just turn onto the camera there. These sights are excellent. Now they did later on in the 20s went through what they called the weed and repair, where they removed the long range dial sights, which would have been fit on all rifles in the turn of the 20th century. When these were initially conceived, they would have had long range dial sights, the early Lee Enfields, long Lee Enfields, and anything before the number 1 Mark III Star would have had a long range dial sight, but it turned out that they were just a waste of time. Nobody fired to that kind of range, that kind of distance. Machine guns like the Vickers and the Maxims were doing what these long range sights were supposed to do, which is just kind of lay down volley fire on what they call a beaten zone, somewhere out of the line of sight of the actual shooters or the operators. So yeah, these went into service in 1914. Like I said, they were quite liked by sharpshooters or marksmen or snipers, if they were fit with a sniper scope, as some of them were. And the standard, Tommy didn't like it that much. It was a little bit heavier than his SMLE. It was a good bit longer than the SMLE, but it did fire extremely well. It was cock on close, so it fired as rapidly as his SMLE did, but it did have a longer bolt throw because it has those front locking lugs. Now, this does suffer from what all rimmed ammunition rifles suffers badly from rim jam, especially on blanks. Blanks don't have the little chamfer on the rim like live rounds do. So they do. These are blanks. I'm not putting live rounds into a rifle inside my house. So that's the pattern 1914 rifle. I hope you liked this video. I hope you found it interesting. Please like, please subscribe. Any comments, please leave them down below. I'll see you again soon.